Mark said. Quote, "We Filipinos also experienced an iron fist dictatorship. Ferdinand Marcos and his cronies ruled the Philippines and the Filipinos for 20 years. The Marcos family became one of the most richest families in the world according to some reports, while majority of Filipinos were struggling to make ends meet. The Philippines became the most indebted country in the whole Asia. The Marcos regime seized the freedom of the press. The Marcos regime took over the media outlets. Critics and dissents were silenced, some were jailed and some were killed. Both of my parents were activists during those times. They were tortured and jailed a number of times. Unfortunately, some of their comrades didn't make it alive. Both of my parents took part in the 1975 La Tundina strike. My father and mother were part of the organizers. The 1975 La Tundina strike was the first major strike in Marcos's martial law. The 1975 La Tundina strike was the trigger of other major strikes that occurred which led to the ousting of the Marcos's dictatorial regime. I am proud of my parents because they fought for freedom and democracy. They did put their lives at risk for the freedom that we availed after the 1986 People Power Revolution. Yes, I consider my parents heroes. Yes, my parents are heroes in my book." Unquote. Mark said. Red tagging is part of the norms in the Philippines. Yes, the military, the police and some pro-fascist people accuse critics and dissents rebel communists and terrorists. So I have to tell this, that no one from my family is a part of the armed rebel communist group. No one from my family is a terrorist. Don't quote me out of context. I'm not saying that the members of the armed communist rebel group in the Philippines are terrorist. I am just simply stating that no one from my family is a terrorist. Because red tag in the Philippines means you are a terrorist in their book. I have to say this, because the Philippine military and Philippine National Police red tag people after people after people. In the Philippines, if you are red tagged, your life and freedom are at risk. You could be harassed, jailed or worse, killed. Yes, it happens in the Philippines, my friends. In the Philippines, if you are a government critic, you put your safety at risk. If I get red tagged by the military or police, I will immediately call my lawyers and my friends from local and international media. Those who's been following my channel for years know that my family and I have been interviewed by some news agencies in USA, Germany, and the Philippines. I will immediately contact them to make noise. I am an American citizen, by the way. Yes, Mr. Military and Police, try to illegally arrest an American citizen. Go red tag me and I will sue you for defamation and libel. Unquote.
Starting on February 2nd, children at the age of 12 years and below are required to seat on a child car seat while inside a vehicle.
Mark said. Quote, another money-making piggy bank for the corrupt police, MMDA and LTO officials. The bottom line of this, if you are caught without putting your child on a car seat, you will get a citation ticket. Citation ticket means money revenue that goes into their pockets. Wait, did I mention the bribes that those police, MMDA and LTO crocodiles would get from ordinary citizens if caught? Bribes, yes. We all know that the culture of bribery in the Philippines is big. Are you surprised? If you are caught, would you not bribe the police officer for less hassle? Of course you will. Bribery in the Philippine culture is considered normal. Millions of Filipinos are struggling to make ends meet. The Philippines and Filipinos have tremendous problems right now. This is nothing but another thorn in the neck of the ordinary Filipinos. This is my personal opinion and I have all the rights to express it, according to the 1987 Constitution Bill of Rights. Unquote. Mark said, quote, "This is my personal opinion and I have all the rights to express it, according to the 1987 Constitution Bill of Rights." Yes, the Philippines imposed the longest lockdown and still in a lockdown. It's very inconvenient that you have to apply for a travel pass and get a medical certificate just to go to a different city and/or province. Yes, you have to pay thousands of pesos for a swab test. Outrageous, isn't it? It is very annoying, inconvenient, and expensive. To make it worse, while millions of Filipinos are struggling to make ends meet, the national government is very busy red tagging and arresting people who are critical to the government. Are you thinking of criticizing the Philippine government? You better think not just twice, but a lot of times before doing so. There are many evil forces within the government and you better think of your safety. Okay, back to this pandemic lockdown. In my opinion, this pandemic lockdown has become a mega profitable business for the local and national governments. How come they have ordinary people pay for every swab test they take? People are starving and they struggle to make ends meet. Why can't the local and national governments shoulder the expenses? They claim time to time that they receive swab test donation kits from other countries like China, so why let ordinary people pay for it? Also, in my opinion, this ridiculous lockdown has become a way of control. Yes, total control. This lockdown gives the government to easily control and subdue the population. Total control of the population, which gives them full benefits in many ways out of the sufferings of the ordinary citizens. This pandemic lockdown only benefits the people and the government, while the ordinary citizens are struggling big time. Again, I have all the rights to express my opinion, according to the 1987 Constitution Bill of Rights. So, are you going to red tag me and accuse me of being part of the communist armed rebels just because I stated my opinion? Do so and I will contact my lawyers right away, and my friends in the local and international media. I am also an American citizen for your information. I am sorry my viewers, but I have to say this, because in the Philippines, they don't touch people with money, influence and connections. But if you are just an ordinary person without money and connection, they can easily harass and arrest you, worse, kill you. Lives of poor and ordinary citizens in the Philippines don't really matter to them. Unquote.
Mga kababayan, Walang isang kasagutan para masolusyonan ang kahirapan. Upang masugpo ang kahirapan, kailangan natin matukoy at matunton ang punot dulo at ugat nito. Iyong pakatandaan na tama at sapat na edukasyon ang isa sa mga armas na panlaban sa kahirapan. I will say it again, folks. Economic poverty is a system designed to feed the society of the elite. Economic poverty is like an oil that feeds the monstrous engine of corporate capitalism. Economic poverty is not a natural condition.
Mark said, quote, "This is my personal opinion, perspective, and insight. Those lawmakers who want to amend the 1987 Constitution to give more freedom to foreign investors are all sellout and traitors to their own motherland. Those sellout politicians do not care for the well-being of their own countrymen, but for the enriching of their own pockets. A politician who tells you that easing more the restrictions or worse, giving 100% full ownership to foreign investors in the Philippines is either simply ignorant or a liar. Easing the restrictions, or worse, giving a 100% full ownership to foreign investors in the Philippines will produce more social injustices. Economic inequality, the gap between the rich and the poor will rise statistically even higher. There will be more oppression, exploitation, and abuses of the local population. We Filipinos will lose our voice, and we will just be insignificant pawns in the Game of Thrones. Our nation won't belong to us any longer, and we will be ruled by foreign overlords. Our pride of nationalism will completely fade away along with our national identity. Local Filipino workers will remain economic slaves by foreigners. Local police force, military and government officials will be nothing but toy soldiers of the crony foreign businessmen. They will work for the interests of the foreign overlords and not for the well-being of the local population. Government officials, local Filipino businessmen and politicians should work together on how to produce and improve local Philippine businesses, not to obliterate for the sake of foreign investors' interests. What else could I say? Money is the root of all evil. Like they always say, follow the money, and that's what those corrupt government officials and politicians do. I will say it again, those lawmakers who want to amend the 1987 Constitution to give more freedom to foreign investors are all traitors. I feel sad for our motherland. I feel sad for us Filipinos." Unquote.
You know, one of the many reasons why millions of Filipinos remain poor is due to heavy importation of foreign goods. The Philippine market is being bombarded/flooded by goods coming from foreign countries. We rely heavily on imports, leaving our local economy stagnant and helping foreign companies/corporations to profit more out of us.
Paz, Bolivia.
You can take a photo. There's a car coming.
Got it.
Got it?
Uh-huh.
So we move. One more.
Good enough. It's a video. Video
Oh,
clip.
sorry.
So yeah, I got it.
We can move.
Let's go.
Vámonos. Haciendo videos ambos. Listo. Gracias.
Raynan, when did they build the Che Guevara monument?
Okay, that monument had been constructed in 2003 after a big social revolution in La Paz and El Alto, this city. And it's this city when they made to resign one president, Gonzalo Sanchez de Lozada. And everybody were looking for equality, and that was the best symbol for this city, El Che.
I see. All right. Thank you so much for the
You're
information.
welcome. Have a nice flight, Mark.
All right. Thank you.
Quezon City policemen tried to illegally arrest 3 students who were painting their personal opinion about the police force. Fortunately, a paralegal intervened to stop the illegal arrest. There was an intense confrontation, but eventually, the policemen relented, but they left a grave threat. The policemen threatened them, saying, "We will come and see you every day. We will get you one by one." Mark said, quote, "Are we back in the era of martial law? Are we back in the 70s, where the police force intimidate, harass, illegally arresting, and sometimes killing ordinary citizens who simply shout their grievances?" Those 3 students were painting murals on a private property wall, so they can paint and write whatever they want. We have a freedom of speech and expression, don't we? Those 3 students who were harassed and threatened by the police should ask for legal assistance. They should sue those policemen. Democracy in the Philippines is rapidly fading away. Filipinos are almost living in a tyrannical dictatorship. Unquote. Philippine Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana terminates the 1989 DNDUP Accord, which prohibits state security forces from entering university premises without prior notice to the school administration. In a letter dated January 15, 2021, Lorenzana states that the Department of National Defense finds the 1989 agreement as a hindrance in providing effective security, safety, and welfare of the students, faculty, and employees of the University of the Philippines. The DNDUP agreement signed on June 30, 1989, is a product of the democratic reform movement led by the youth and student sector. In recent months, the University of the Philippines was the venue of protest actions against the controversial anti-terror law. Just few months ago, the president of the Philippines red-tagged the whole university. He stated, "They are doing nothing in the University of the Philippines, but to recruit communists." The University of the Philippines is a safe haven for artists, progressive thinkers, theorists, and ideologists. Freedom of speech and critical thinking are the main core and values of the University of the Philippines. Mark said, quote, "This is my personal opinion and insight. Is this another martial law? Are we back in the 70s, where the state repress and abuse its citizens? Terminating the 1989 DNDUP Accord is another blow to democracy. Now, the police and military can easily intimidate, harass, and illegally arrest students, professors, and faculty members. How could we just sit idle and do nothing about the undemocratic things that the government is doing? How could we play deaf, mute, and blind to all of these? Democracy in the Philippines is rapidly dying. Filipinos are almost living in a tyrannical dictatorship. Unquote. Defense Secretary Lorenza said, "The University of the Philippines has become the breeding ground of intransigent individuals and groups, whose extremist beliefs have inveigled students to join their ranks to fight against the government. The country's premier state university has become a safe haven for enemies of the state," he added. Few months ago, the president of the Philippines threatened to defund the university. The president also accused the school of coddling communists, but failed to provide evidence to back up his claim. The University of the Philippines condemned the government administration's decision to unilaterally terminate a decades-old agreement that required state officials to notify the school first before they conduct any military or police operations within any of the institution's campuses. Mark said, quote, "This is my personal opinion. I think the government is desperate. They are fierce against critics and dissents, but they are all cowards on matters of the Chinese invasion of the West Philippine Sea. They extremely despise Filipino communists, but they are all Chinese communist bootlickers. So what do you call that? Double standard? If they are really searching for real communists, then target the Chinese who flood into the Philippines and not the intellectuals of the University of the Philippines." Unquote. A Chinese citizen journalist held since May for her livestream reporting from Wuhan, as the virus outbreak unfurled, was set for trial Monday, almost a year after details of an unknown viral pneumonia surfaced in the central China city. The Chinese citizen, who was a former lawyer, could face up to 5 years in jail. Her live reports and essays were widely shared on social media platforms in February, grabbing the attention of authorities, who have punished 8 virus whistleblowers so far, as they deify criticism of the government's response to the outbreak.
Mark said, quote, "Reporting the truth which involves the government is a very risky move indeed. I personally know this because I came from a family of writers, novelists and journalists. In the Philippines, do you have balls of steel for reporting the truth which involves the government? If none, then journalism is not for you. Have you heard what happened to the biggest news media company in the Philippines? Shut down by the government this year, 2020. Have you heard what happened to the founder and CEO of the news media outlet called Rappler? Have you heard what happened to the editor-in-chief of the news media outlet called Manila Today? This year, 2020, many Filipino journalists were apprehended and jailed by the current government. Is it dangerous to become a journalist in the Philippines? Yes, indeed." Unquote.
International groups launch probe on human rights violations in the Philippines. Alarmed at the worsening situation of human rights in the Philippines, church groups, political leaders and members of civil society from different countries launched an international mission on December 17, 2020. The initiative is dubbed as the Independent International Commission of Investigation into Human Rights Violations in the Philippines. It aims to further substantiate the June 2020 report by the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. Its members intend to submit the findings to the International Criminal Court and to the other relevant UN bodies, such as UN Human Rights Council, UN Security Council, and the UN General Assembly Special Session. During the online launch, Lee Rhiannon, former senator from New South Wales, Australia, said, "Several groups from the international community have come together to raise the voice of the Filipino people." She said that what is happening in the Philippines amounts to crimes against humanity, and that perpetrators must be held accountable. Rhiannon said, "The evidence is overwhelming. One of my lasting memories of my time in Manila is the number of people who said to me, 'We need your support, we need you and many others to speak out in your country.'" Rhiannon said that human rights violations in the Philippines have been escalating since her last visit in Manila last year. Rhiannon said, "This is most definitely a global issue. I do believe that the international community has a responsibility to speak out. We must not allow the call for human rights to be hijacked. Accountability must be part of the justice and democratic system." Rhiannon said, "The tactics of the current regime amount to state terrorism. Democracy is slipping away in the Philippines," she added. The former senator cited deeply disturbing reports about the human rights abuses committed especially against the Lumad people, religious groups, lawyers, the media and red-tagged individuals under the government's counterinsurgency campaign. The investigation will also be through a hybrid of virtual and physical fact findings, and will cover the period from June 30, 2016, until the end of 2020. Primary sources will be victims, the relatives of the victims, civil society organizations, experts as well as government agencies. Mark said, quote, "Some people assume that I am anti-government. Some people misjudge that I am anti-government. My reply, no, I am not. I am not anti-government. As a matter of fact, I truly believe in a firm government for the people. A government for the people and by the people. It is an elementary common sense, my friend. How could a society function without bodies of a government? It is impossible. We need a government for our society and nation to function accordingly. You see, my friend, I am not anti-government. It's the corruption, abuse of power, greed, exploitation, oppression and repression that I despise. Do you understand what I am saying here? Do you understand my point?" Unquote. Mark said, quote, "Why do you keep telling me that I have no right to criticize the government? Why do you keep telling me that I have no right to criticize the politicians? Who said that I have no rights to criticize? Who said that I cannot criticize? Are we living under a dictatorship? Are we living under a fascist rule? As far as I know, we live in a democratic free nation. As far as I know, the Constitution Bill of Rights give me the freedom to criticize and to shout my grievances. Remember, activism is part of our constitutional rights. Do not red tag me. I criticize, yes, but it doesn't mean that I am a terrorist. I criticize, yes, but it doesn't mean that I am part of the new People's Army. Do not let red tagging to become normal. Do not let red tagging to become part of our norms. Unquote. English translation. New People's Army video bloggers, surrender now while there's still time. Stop what you are doing. You are in disguise, pretending that you are helping, but the truth is, you are recruiting people to join you in the mountains. We all know you. Mark said. Quote. Just to let you guys know, that we are saving the screenshots of people who red tag us and our channel. These people will be sued for defamation and libel. Unquote. Red tagging in the Philippines refers to the malicious blacklisting of individuals or organizations, critical or not fully supportive of the actions of a sitting government administration. This blacklisting takes the form of being red tagged as either a communist or terrorist or both, regardless of one's actual political beliefs or group affiliations. Such blacklisting is a form of incitement and has pernicious effects on its targets. Red tagging may be performed by either public servants or shills. The United Nations, Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch warned that the use of red tagging as a political tactic undermines Philippine democracy by stifling dissent, producing a chilling effect on general discourse, and more insidiously, encouraging assassinations and retaliations. The notorious practice, better known in the Philippines as red tagging, is one that many rights groups consider dangerous and life-threatening. The Human Rights Defender Protection Act prohibits people including the government from red tagging individuals. Mark said. If you know the individual who is red tagging you, go and sue that individual.
The current Philippine president lifts ban on West Philippine Sea oil exploration. The current Philippine president has lifted his predecessor's ban on oil exploration in the West Philippine Sea, bringing the country one step closer to implementing a joint exploration deal with China. The ban was put in place by the former President Aquino, after his government took China to court for encroachments in the West Philippine Sea, which is said to be rich in oil and natural gas. Mark said, quote, "It enrages me to think that our motherland was sold and continues to be sold to foreign powers. Filipino crony businessmen and corrupt politicians are nothing but sellout. They continue to sell the Philippines' natural and human resources to foreign powers. I feel terribly sick for myself and for my fellow countrymen. We Filipinos are nothing but slaves of our foreign overlords. Unquote.
The Chinese-Philippine build na mga proyekto na yan, ay binabaon tayong mga Pilipino sa napakalalim na utang. Pwede ko na bang sabihin na pagmamay-ari na ng bansang China ang ating inang bayang Pilipinas? Nakakatawang isipin na ang China ay isang komunistang bansa. And yet, the Philippine government pushes so hard to obliterate communism in the Philippines. Inaprubahan at binigyan na ng 25-year franchise license to operate ng mga mambabatas ang Dito Telecommunications. Ngayon, importante ninyong malaman na 40% ng Dito Telecommunications ay pagmamay-ari ng Chinese state-owned China Telecommunications Corporation. 35% ng Dito Telecommunications ay pagmamay-ari ng isang Chinese, uulitin ko, ng isang Chinese-Filipino businessman. Walastek, binenta at tuluyang binebenta ng mga politiko ang mga Pilipino at Pilipinas sa bansang China. A whopping 4.5 trillion pesos budget for the year 2021. Woo! Whopping indeed. A 3,000% increase in fund to end the armed conflict against the communist. My opinion and assumption? Giant foreign corporations are pressuring the Philippine government to end the fights of the progressive poor so they can easily grab lands and build their corporate empires on Philippine soil. The Chinese-Philippine build na mga proyekto na yan, ay binabaon tayong mga Pilipino sa napakalalim na utang. Pwede ko na bang sabihin na pagmamay-ari na ng bansang China ang ating inang bayang Pilipinas? Nakakatawang isipin na ang China ay isang komunistang bansa. And yet, the Philippine government pushes so hard to obliterate communism in the Philippines. Ayon sa mga ulat o balita, nagkakagulo ang mga kongresista sa Kongreso ukol sa hatian ng pork barrel. Nagkakagulo din ang mga kongresista kung sino ang susunod o dapat na maging House Speaker. Ayon sa balita, ang bangayan ukol sa kung sino ang nararapat na maging House Speaker ay dahil sa hatian ng pondo ng pork barrel.
Mark said, quote, "Yes, you have grievances, you complain and you criticize the government. Now, does it mean that you are a terrorist? Of course not. Does it mean that you are a member of the armed communist rebel group? Of course not. If you know the person who red tagged you, go and sue him for libel. Do not let them red tag you. Do not let them use the mechanism of red tagging to intimidate you. Do not let them use the mechanism of red tagging to become part of our norms. Always remember that we all have the rights to express our grievances, to complain, to criticize and to express our opinions. Always remember that we are protected by the 1987 Constitution, Bill of Rights. Always exercise your rights as a citizen of the Philippines. Because if you let them intimidate you and you become tame, it will be the end of democracy and darkness will reign supreme over us. unquote.